Admiral Christensen talked about the topic that y'all have been meeting on at this gathering, and it's energy. And it's another challenge that we face, and it's a challenge that we cannot win on the battlefield, but if we do not win it, it will have profound implications for us on the battlefield. And a lot of you, I suspect, I know that members of the SNAP, I know that the flag community here have heard me make variations of this talk over and over and over again for the past 2 years. And I know you got to be sick of it. But let me tell you why. Particularly here at the War College, one of the things that you do is you look for vulnerabilities. You look for vulnerabilities of our potential adversaries. But you also, if you're smart, look at your own vulnerabilities. What would an adversary try to exploit from us? Energy is a vulnerability of ours. We have to take care of that vulnerability to be better warfighters. We have to take care of this to be the Navy and Marine Corps that we need to be. This is not just sort of one of those passing fancies. This is not just, well, that's the Secretary of the Navy's stuff, and as soon as he leaves, we can get on with the real business at hand here. This is our main vulnerability. We use too much fossil fuels, and we buy them from either actually or potentially volatile places on Earth. We have to change the way we use, produce, get energy. We have to do it strategically. We have to do it tactically. It's something that this president and this administration cares very deeply about. It affects our operations. It affects our budget every single day. Our reliance on fossil fuels hurts our warfighting capacity, brings risk to national security, harms our environment, and negatively affects our economy. And you don't have to go any further than just the headlines. CNO yesterday talked about every dollar rise in the price of a barrel of oil, it means another $31 million that the Navy has to spend on fuel. The Defense Logistics Agency just raised their fuel standard price by right at $39. What this means is that over the next year, $562 million more is going to be spent for fuel in the Navy and Marine Corps than we anticipate. That's way more than the cost of another littoral combat ship. That's what it's costing us. We don't have that money to spare. We certainly don't have it to spare in this fiscal environment. Strategically, we know we've got to change. Tactically, it's imperative too. And a lot of you have heard me repeat these statistics. We import more gasoline into Afghanistan than we do any other thing. For every 50 convoys, we lose a Marine, either killed or wounded. And we take those Marines guarding those convoys and take them away from what we sent them to Afghanistan to do, which is fight and engage and rebuild. So I think it's imperative. I don't think we have a choice. We got to do something about this. As Amory Lovins said yesterday, we have to reinvent fire. And I'm here to tell you the Navy and Marine Corps are doing exactly that. 20 months ago, I laid out 5 energy goals for the Navy. And I am more confident today than I was 20 months ago that we're going to meet every one of those goals. The most overarching of which is that by no later than 2020, at least half of all the energy the Navy and Marine Corps uses, whether afloat or ashore, is going to come from non-fossil fuel sources. Now, when we were debating these goals, there were folks who said, well, yeah, that's good. We just can't do that. It's a little too aggressive. I think you live up to expectations. You get a modest goal, you'll meet it, and you'll get a modest result. We're the United States Navy. We're the United States Marine Corps. We don't do things in small ways. We have always been in the forefront of innovation in terms of energy. We moved from sail to coal in the middle of the 19th century. We moved from coal to oil in the early part of the 20th century. We moved to nuclear in the middle of the 20th century. And every single time we did that, every time, there were a lot of folks that said, whoa, what a mistake. What are you doing? You're trading something that you know works. You're trading something that we know how to deal with, we know how to operate with, and you're moving us into something new that's unproven. In fact, when we moved from sail to coal, there was a board of Navy flags that blasted the decision, that said it would never work. When we moved from coal to oil, the argument was made, but we've invested so much in these coaling stations around the world. How can we just walk away from that infrastructure? They were wrong every single time, these naysayers. And they're going to be wrong this time too, because we're absolutely going to meet these goals. Because I think we're right on the edge of another energy revolution. I'm from Mississippi, and my doctor there, Little Woodliff, so as not to be confused with his older brother, Big Woodliff, was the, and this is completely an aside, but the way my staff knows if somebody is a friend of mine when they call in, if they've got a name like Bob or Mary, they don't know me. If it's Catfish, Diamond Jim, somebody like that, they're pretty good chance that they're a good friend. But Little Woodliff was head of a speaking series, and he called me up, and he said, I want you to come and speak to this group on chaos theory. And I thought he was talking about my administration. I didn't know anything about chaos theory except being in the middle of it. And he said, no, it's an interesting theory, and it's one of the topics that this group has expressed an interest to hear about, and I want you to talk about it. So I go out and I start reading about chaos theory. And there's a more recent book called The Tipping Point. And basically, boiled down to where English majors like me can understand it, it's that systems tend to stay the way they are. They tend to move in very small areas. They tend not to change much gradually. Maybe a little bit at the margins, here or there. But that systems tend to stay exactly the way they have been going until something happens.